Scott Stevens destroys Eric Lindros. This one wasn't just a hit. It was a turning point in NHL history. Game 7 of the 2000 Eastern Conference Finals. Eric Lindros, Flyers captain, crossing the blue line with his head down. Then, boom.
Here's 88. Lindros makes the move, and Lindros is hammered down to the ice.
Scott Stevens of the Devils delivers one of the hardest, cleanest, and most brutal shoulder checks ever seen. Lindros' helmet goes flying. He's out cold before he even hits the ice. It wasn't just a highlight reel hit. It was career-altering. Lindros missed the entire next season and was never the same dominant player again. The scary part? People saw it coming. Don Cherry literally predicted before the game that Stevens was waiting for that exact moment. Even Stevens himself admitted later that he recognized that look in Lindros' eyes. Premeditated or not, it was devastating. Just when you thought Stevens was done making nightmares for opponents, he came back for another one 3 years later. Scott Stevens levels Paul Kariya. The Devils were facing the Ducks in the 2003 Stanley Cup Finals when Paul Kariya became Scott Stevens' next victim. Kariya had just dished off a pass when Stevens unloaded another crushing shoulder to the head. The hit was so violent, it broke Kariya's visor, left him flat on the ice, and stunned the entire arena into silence.
On his stick, he moves it. Oh, guys, that's interference.
Never saw that coming because Stevens came from his right and he was looking left.
And here's the wild part. Minutes later, Kariya miraculously returned to the game. Not only did he come back, he scored a goal. Hollywood stuff, right? Except in real life, the damage was permanent. That hit piled onto Kariya's long history of concussions and became one of the reasons he was forced to retire way too early. At the time, NHL officials called it a nice hockey hit. Today, it would be an automatic suspension. The rules changed, but the memory of that impact hasn't faded. But Stevens wasn't the only one ending careers. 2 years earlier, Ulf Samuelsson made Bruins fans furious with a single dirty knee. Ulf Samuelsson ruins Cam Neely's knee. If you want to talk about a hit that changed the course of a franchise, this one tops the list. Game 3 of the 1991 Eastern Conference Finals. Bruins versus Penguins. Cam Neely, one of the NHL's most feared power forwards, is skating up the ice when Ulf Samuelsson cuts across. Knee-on-knee collision, Neely crumbles instantly. The aftermath was brutal. Neely developed myositis ossificans. Part of his muscle literally turned into bone. He missed huge chunks of time and never fully recovered, retiring at just 31 years old. For Bruins fans, it was more than a dirty hit. It robbed them of one of their greatest players in his prime. To this day, Boston fans still spit Samuelsson's name like a curse word. It wasn't just a cheap shot. It was a hit that changed NHL history. And unfortunately, that wouldn't be the last time a single collision rewrote a career. Brian Campbell obliterates R.J. Umberger. After Cam Neely's career-ending knee shot, you'd think NHL players would learn not to skate with their heads down. But in 2006, R.J. Umberger found out the hard way. Game 1, Eastern Conference Quarterfinals. Flyers versus Sabres. Overtime. Umberger carries the puck through the neutral zone, eyes on the play, and then wham! Brian Campbell lines him up and delivers what might be the most devastating open ice hit in playoff history. Umberger crumbled to the ice and stayed there for minutes. Fans held their breath. Campbell later admitted he actually felt bad. You hope you make a hit like that and he pops up and gets going. But this time, no chance. The hit was completely legal by NHL standards, but it became the perfect example of why coaches scream, "Keep your head up." And if you thought that was brutal, wait until we get to the one hit that wasn't even about hockey. It was pure revenge. Todd Bertuzzi attacks Steve Moore. Some hits are remembered for being clean and crushing. This one, it's remembered because it crossed every line imaginable. March 8, 2004. Vancouver's Todd Bertuzzi had been gunning for Colorado rookie Steve Moore ever since Moore delivered a controversial hit on Canucks captain Marcus Naslund weeks earlier. When Moore wouldn't drop the gloves, Bertuzzi lost patience. He skated up behind him, grabbed his jersey, and sucker punched him in the back of the head. Moore went down instantly, his face slamming the ice with Bertuzzi on top. The result? 3 fractured neck vertebrae, severe concussion symptoms, and the end of Steve Moore's career.
And the face of Steve Moore, his head goes down here. Bertuzzi goes after him, and he lands on him right there. And then the pile lands on Steve Moore. Looks like he's out at that point.
Bertuzzi was suspended indefinitely, faced criminal charges in Canada, and even pled guilty to assault causing bodily harm. The NHL had no choice but to tighten rules and enforcement after that. If Bertuzzi's act was hockey's darkest moment, Dale Hunter's infamous cheap shot the decade before wasn't far behind. Dale Hunter's cheap shot on Pierre Turgeon. Playoff goals usually mean celebration, but for Pierre Turgeon in 1993, his biggest goal turned into one of the ugliest moments in NHL history. Islanders vs. Capitals, Game 6. Turgeon scores a series-clinching goal and raises his arms to celebrate. Seconds later, bam! Dale Hunter blindsides him with a vicious hit, long after the puck had crossed the line. Turgeon hit the board shoulder first and was down in pain. Diagnosis? A separated shoulder that sidelined him for nearly the rest of the playoffs. The Islanders, robbed of their star, were furious. New commissioner Gary Bettman wasted no time sending a message.
The goal. What a beauty. Now watch Hunter as he follows. He follows Pierre Turgeon, and then he just golfs him. And here everything breaks down.
Hunter got a then-record 21-game suspension, showing the league was ready to punish cheap shots with real consequences. Years later, Turgeon admitted Hunter did call to apologize, but said he didn't even realize Turgeon had scored. Intentional or not, fans never forgot. And believe it or not, the list of brutal hits keeps climbing, from bone-crushing open ice to blind sides that made NHL history. Matt Cook's blindside hit on Marc Savard. If Dale Hunter's hit on Turgeon was pure malice, Matt Cook's on Marc Savard was the kind of play that changed the rulebook. March 7th, 2010. Penguins vs. Bruins. Savard carried the puck out of the zone, eyes on the play, and Cook came flying in with a blindside shoulder straight to Savard's head. No penalty, no suspension. Totally legal at the time.
For my liking, it's too much forearm, not enough shoulder. And I don't like the fact that he got no part of Savard's body except the head.
Savard wasn't so lucky. He suffered a grade 3 concussion and never fully recovered. His career was essentially over, his life altered. Bruins fans still boil at the thought of Cook's hit, and honestly, rightfully so. The outrage was so loud that the NHL had no choice but to act. That summer, they introduced Rule 48, banning blindside headshots. In a weird way, Savard's pain became the catalyst for safer hockey. From a hit that rewrote the rules, let's swing back to one that reminded everyone why a perfectly timed hip check can still take your breath away. Dan Hamhuis hip checks Milan Lucic. The 2011 finals were already intense. Vancouver versus Boston, two cities desperate for a cup. Game 1, Rogers Arena. Enter Dan Hamhuis. Milan Lucic barreled into the zone like a freight train, and Hamhuis lined him up with an old-school hip check. Lucic went airborne, flipped head over heels, and crashed into the ice.
Milan Lucic over Tea Kettle. That's a big man that he just went down low and hit.
Fans roared, Lucic looked stunned, and Hamhuis? He actually injured himself making the hit, forcing the Canucks to play the last 36 minutes with only 5 defensemen. Somehow, Vancouver still pulled off a 1-0 win. The play became one of the signature moments of that finals, not because Lucic stayed down, he bounced back, but because it showed how physical and brutal playoff hockey can be. In the end, the Canucks couldn't finish the job, but that highlight reel hip check is still etched in memory. But if Lucic's crash landing was dramatic, Dion Phaneuf's obliteration of Kyle Okposo was downright violent. Dion Phaneuf destroys Kyle Okposo. Preseason games are supposed to be tune-ups. For Dion Phaneuf in 2009, it turned into destruction. The Calgary Flames defenseman lined up Islanders forward Kyle Okposo as he cut across the ice with his head down. Boom! One of the hardest, cleanest body checks you'll ever see. Okposo hit the ice hard, gloves and stick flying everywhere. A yard sale hit, as players call it. He lay motionless for minutes while trainers rushed in, and the arena went silent. The hit immediately sparked a line brawl, with Islanders teammates charging Phaneuf in defense of their fallen player. The crazy part? It was legal. Brutal, but legal. For Okposo, it was a scary moment in a young career. For Phaneuf, it was a reminder of his reputation, fearless, physical, and downright terrifying to skate against. And if you think that's bad, the next hit wasn't just crushing, it sparked outrage across the entire league. Tom Wilson breaks Zach Aston Reese's jaw. By this point, Tom Wilson's reputation was already cemented, one of the NHL's most physical and most controversial players. But Game 3 of the 2018 Eastern Conference second round took things to another level. Penguins forward Zach Aston Reese carried the puck up the ice near the Capitals bench, and Wilson came flying in with a shoulder that connected squarely with Aston Reese's head. The aftermath was brutal. Aston Reese's jaw was broken, and he also suffered a concussion. Wilson? He was laughing on the bench while Penguins players shouted at him across the ice. That moment fueled the narrative that Wilson wasn't just reckless, he was reveling in the chaos he caused.
There's the stick handle. You see Wilson come in. Zach Aston Reese, now the principal point of contact there. Watch that.
The league handed him a 3-game suspension, but many argued it wasn't nearly enough for a repeat offender. Penguins fans were furious. Capitals fans defended him as just playing hard. Everyone else? They debated whether the NHL had a player safety problem or a Tom Wilson problem. From legal hip checks to sucker punches to career-ending concussions, these hits remind us just how thin the line is between hockey's greatest moments and its darkest ones. And there you have it, 10 of the most devastating hits in NHL history. Some were clean, some were dirty, and a few were so brutal they changed the rules of the game forever. Scott Stevens' shoulder checks rewrote careers, Bertuzzi's attack rewrote laws, and Cook's blindside hit literally rewrote the rule book. But here's the real question. Which of these do you think was the most devastating? The one that left you speechless? Or maybe the one you still can't believe was even legal at the time? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and let's argue this one out like hockey fans do. And if you want more deep dives into the most insane, controversial, and jaw-dropping stories in sports history, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe. Because the next list, it might just be even harder to watch.